Okay, so to help us get back on track moving into our week here, week 4, and missing week 3, there are two things I want to talk about in this video lecture to help us catch up. The first one I want to mention here, I posted two new things. One is understanding and practicing practicing using vivid descriptive details, and then this other one I have here concerning dialogue. So let's start with the descriptive details one first. Now, real quickly here, what I'm wanting you to do here, just to take note, is to understand exactly what vivid details are and why we have them in narrative stories. Basically, the purpose is to paint a picture. So if you imagine the idea that you can see a picture, take, for example, my image right here at the top. All right, you can see this. You can see that's an avatar of me. You can see hands up. You can see that I have a marker in my hand. You can see a board behind me. Now, imagine if someone cannot see this image, how would you try to go about describing it to them? Okay, that would require that you attempt to describe this image to the best of your ability and very much try to communicate it so that whoever hears the words or reads the words that you've written down would have an idea in their head of what this image should look like. So it's basically a form of communicating the image via words, all right, or painting a picture. Now down here there's a definition of vivid descriptive details. Vivid details are another crucial element, particularly in narratives, for helping bring the story to life for the audience. You want to help provide us with a feeling that we are there with you in the story. And it says here we want to aim to create mental sensations of the sights, the sounds, the smells, even the taste and texture of the world in which your story takes place. So it's not only about painting a picture, but it's about bringing us, the audience, into the story itself, making us feel a part of it, making us feel like we are there with you in the story, very much understanding what is going on. All right, that is your aim. Right. So to put this another way, what I'm going to have you guys do is I'd like you to practice this. This is something you should be doing in your narrative essay at this point. It's something that when I look at your rough drafts, I may redirect you to do more of. Okay. Because it's also a nice way of helping to fill in space if you're struggling as well. All right. So you will attempt to, using descriptive and vivid detail, and we will discuss this on Monday in class, to paint a picture of the comic book image below in words. Put this another way, your job is to be able to describe it written down as if the audience cannot see or will not see this image. What I'm looking for you guys to do, and you will turn this in to me, and it can be handwritten, I'm looking for about 4 to 5 sentences, and what I want you to do is to look very closely at this image here. You can click on it and save it. Let me see if I can open image in a new tab. All right. So yeah, you can get inside here. So you'll see that there are some narration boxes, there's a title, there's the figure of Batman, you'll see the candles. The idea is that imagine if you needed to communicate the details of this image to another person. Now you're going to struggle with this, and that's okay. Struggling is how we try to make progress here, but I want you to give it your best effort so that when I look at these exercises and try to give you some feedback, you can then turn around and be using that in your paper itself. Okay. Now that covers the one exercise I want you to do. Then the other thing I want you to look at for me is this notion of dialogue. And this ties into the vivid details, but the dialogue is a very particular element in that it gives the narrative a sense of being alive, because it allows you to demonstrate the interactive communication of characters in the story, not only yourself, but say, for example, your character is talking to others, other people are talking to you, maybe you're just talking to yourself. But this sense of dialoguing, presenting dialogue in that, so that exchange of information can be helpful. And I want to look at the ways in which we can handle that by looking at some examples that I've got linked here in this PowerPoint from chapter 37 from an older version of the Norton's textbook I used to use. So let's take a look at this slideshow. All right, so talking about dialogue. Now, I got lazy on this one and I did screen capture. It says, dialogue is a way of including people's own words in a text, letting readers hear those other people's voices, not just about what you say about them. Sometimes memoirs, profiles, they talk about other things that use or make use of dialogue. Now, they start off here by talking about why would one wish to add dialogue. I'm going to tell you guys you are not required to use it or required to add it, but I think it's highly recommended. So dialogue is a way of bringing in voices other than your own, of showing people and scenes rather than just telling about them. Okay, so it can go beyond the idea here. If you were just showing people and scenes rather than just telling about them, that's kind of what you're doing with vivid detail. So this is an added component. You can add color and texture to your writing, making it more memorable. Most important, however, dialogue should be more than just colorful or interesting. It needs to contribute to your rhetorical purpose. In this case, it needs to basically be relevant to the story narrative that you are telling. Okay, that's what you need to keep in mind here. So here's an excerpt of someone using dialogue, and then we're going to talk about it. So it says here, this is something from a reading. It says, 2 pubescent girls in retainers and braces sat beside me sipping coffees topped with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. Their shopping bags gathered tightly around their legs, their eyes fixed on the passing crowd. They said some shapoki. Now, I'm going to stop for a second here. Before I get to the dialogue, I want to mention here the fact that what I've got going on here, all this leading into this, is an example of me using descriptive details. I am trying to paint a picture of these 2 young girls, possibly how old they are. For example, it said they sat beside me sipping coffee, so they're obviously older. They're not here with parents, so they must be of a certain age. They've got shopping bags, so they've got some of their own money. But it does say that they're pubescent girls in retainers and braces. So they're maybe, I would guess, somewhere between 13, 14, 15, maybe 16. Obviously old enough to, say, be here on their own, do their own thing, but not old enough that you would consider them responsible adults. It's nowhere, one of them explained. Now she's referring back to Shapoki. The mega mall, she added, was a buzz at first, but now it seems pretty normal. Except my parents are like 20 questions every time I want to come here, especially since the shooting. Next paragraph. On Sunday night, she elaborated, 3 people had been wounded when shots were fired in a dispute over a San Jose Sharks jacket. In the mall, her friend reminded me, right here at Mega Mall, a shooting. It's like nowhere safe, the first added. Now, of course, the writer decided to put these quotations in here for a reason, because again, it helps give us a picture of these 2 young girls. He has described them for us, but now we get a sense of the kind of language they use. For example, their speech patterns. They're quoting fragments. In the mall, ... right here at Mega Mall, a shooting. All right? Those are fragments. Those are not full sentences, okay? Their use of slang, a buzz at first. My parents are like 20 questions. And even contractions such as sept, especially. It's supposed to be except, especially, okay? But these are all things that the dialogue, added to that vivid detail of how he described them earlier, helps paint a picture of these 2 girls talking to him. And notice also, if you go back and look at that, he does insert things like, in the mall, her friend reminded me. Okay, so that's the other girl chiming in. And then when he goes back to the other one, it was like nowhere safe, the first added. That's referring back to the very first speaker. So he'd make sure to draw distinctions between who is talking. Now, iterating dialogue into your writing. There are certain conventions and something that we want to talk about here. Punctuating and paragraphing. The first one, punctuating. All right. Enclose each speaker's words in quotation marks and put any end punctuation, whether it be periods, question marks, exclamation points, inside the closing quotation mark. So if I go back up here, in the mall, notice the comma's inside the quotation mark. Right here at Mega Mall, a shooting, the period is inside. So it all should be self-contained inside the quotation marks, okay? Whether you're transcribing words you heard or making them up, you will sometimes need to add punctuation to reflect the rhythm and the sound of speech. In the last sentence, for example, below, we'll see how Chang Ray Lee adds a comma after well and italicizes practice to show intonation and attitude. Okay. So it's a way of trying to insert a sense of how someone might be speaking, whether sarcastically or having a particular attitude in how they say things. So this is another thing we'll see here. Now, the other thing we have to consider before we get to that example is the notion of also paragraph. So we talked about punctuation. Paragraphing is when you write dialogue that includes more than one speaker. You end up basically treating each time a new speaker talks, as a new paragraph. And we'll see that in the example below. All right. And then also we're going to see the use of signal phrases. Sometimes you'll need to introduce dialogue with signal phrases like I said, she asked, and so on to make clear who is speaking. But you don't need to do it every time. Only sometimes needed really to help clean things up. And we're going to see all of this at work in this next example. Now, unlike the first one where we only had two speakers and it was very limited what their dialogue was, this is a back and forth exchange. Okay? So let's start with this. Quote, whom do I talk to? She said. She would mostly speak to me in Korean, and I would answer back in English. All right, now, the thing you'll notice here is that we literally drop down and start a new paragraph. The bank manager. Who else? Question mark. What do I say? Whatever you want to say. Don't speak to me like that, she cried. Now, again, we've introduced a signal phrase here to kind of remind us who's talking. So we started off with a woman. Whoever was in conversation with her responded. She responded back. He responds again. So we're still only two speakers. Now, to remind us and to give us an idea that she's getting upset, don't speak to me like that, exclamation point, she cried. Now he responds again. It's just that you should be able to do it yourself, I said. You know how I feel about this. Well, maybe then you should consider it practice, I answered lightly, using the Korean word to make sure that she understood. So this use of practice in italics is him trying to be more gentle in his tone. Now, this is where I'm going to stop. It does have some further information here about interviews, but I'm a little less worried about that because it's not necessarily something we're going to use at this time. Really, these two forms of this right here is what I want to focus on because this is where it's a little bit more important for us to understand what is being said and to help us understand what's going on. So, let's see, where was that example when he said, well? I'm trying to remember where he said that. All right, probably somewhere in there. But you can go back and look at that. But this is what I wanted to talk with about in terms of how this should work for us, okay? All right, so the dialogue is, again, something I want to go ahead and encourage you guys to be utilizing and incorporating into your essay as well. Now, I don't have an exercise for this one, but I hope to just briefly talk about this some on Monday. So please have that done. And please go ahead and have the exercise here so that if I call on people, you can share with us what you have. And in addition, you will be turning it into me as well. That will also account for some of our time off this week that we missed. All right. I will see you guys on Monday.